everybody, my name is Brian Allen. I'm a freelance illustrator at flylanddesigns.com, and I do these live broadcasts every Friday. At least I try to. Today I'm going to be working on coloring the t-shirt design that I illustrated last week. So if you watched that video, you saw me inking this, and now I'm going to be coloring it. Just bear with me 1 second while I get everything set up. If you're watching me on YouTube or Facebook, I'm going to be trying to answer your questions there. And 1 second. Let's see. Sorry, I should have handled this before I went live, but this is why I draw pictures for a living. Alright, cool. So I'm trying to find a way, sorry for the delay here. I'm going to be drawing this in just a second. Just trying to find a way that I can see your Facebook comments at the same time, man. They don't make it easy. YouTube comments are coming through just fine. Come on. Alright, cool. I better just get started. If you are watching on Facebook and I don't answer your question, I'll try to come back to it later when the stream is done. Still trying to figure out how I can see those comments at the same time. It seemed like it worked fine last time I did it. Alright, so what I skipped here is sort of the boring part of the whole process. I went through and picked all the colors, and what I like to do is any color that I use, since this is a t-shirt design, I'll put a little dot up here with just an approximation of the color. Now, the cool thing about this design on my end is that I do not have to do any silkscreen separations, but my client is going to be doing them, so I still want to make sure that I don't go crazy with the colors. Our last t-shirt design was another fishing shirt, and it was pretty colorful, and the guy did an amazing job separating it. So anyway, these are the colors I came up with. I wanted to do everything in kind of real muted blues, because the idea is that this is like floating underwater. So I want to have a blue highlight come in, sort of reflecting from the bottom, and then sort of a yellow-blue light coming from the top. So what I do first is just once I pick out those colors, I'll go through and use a soft brush to just kind of like give me an idea where the light is coming from. And then I will go in and start working on the shadows, like the mid-tones. So for this one, I'm just going to use a multiply layer, I think. And just take a second to find the right color. There, that's good. Alright, cool. So I'm going to set my flats layer here to a reference layer. And then I'm going to get started. I usually just use a hard edge brush when I'm starting to put in the midtones. And then when I need to soften things up, I'll go in and either smudge it or paint over a little bit with a soft brush. If anyone has any questions while I'm working, the best place to post them would be on YouTube. Hey KT, I see your question right now. I'll get to that in 1 second. Thanks for posting that. Alright, cool. So KT is asking, how do you come up with ideas for non-commissioned art? I want to draw more, but if I don't have a set criteria for a project, it's so hard for me to find an idea. So, sort of the good news, bad news about my business is that business is good, but it means that that's the good news. The bad news is I don't have a lot of time to do my own stuff anymore. I tried to make time, and this year I was supposed to do that. I wanted to make one piece for myself once a month, and you would think that that's obtainable, but it didn't happen. I probably made 3 all year, maybe. This year I'm going to try harder to figure that out, but because it is really important. It's important to do your own stuff because clients, especially a lot of the clients I work with, they're not always professional art directors, so their guidance is not always going to be accurate, I guess. Now it's your job, of course, to kind of take their hand and guide them in the direction that you think would be successful, but that's not always possible. So how do I come up with ideas? Well, when I'm doing my own stuff, one thing I saw recently, a friend of mine brought this up, and I don't remember the name, but there's a card set. It's like a deck of cards that you can get, and each card has a different attribute on it. So one might be male, female, and then the other set of cards is like a totally random word, you know, like I don't know, dog or wolf or sandwich. And then the third set are other adjectives, you know, angry, red, giant. And you're supposed to draw 3 or 4 of these cards, and from these cards you can you now have to create a character that uses all of those attributes. And I thought that was really cool. I have that bookmarked. I want to purchase that at some point. But if you didn't want to buy the deck of cards, it seems to me like it'd be pretty easy to find a random word generator or something online to really kind of shake things up and give you something new and challenging. Because the trouble is, and I'm sure this was the intent of your question, is that whenever you sit down to draw something without direction, sometimes you end up just drawing the same things over and over again. You know, like my go-to are like tiki heads or skulls, and it's not always any. You know, sometimes there's nothing wrong with that. Some artists make a really good living just drawing the same blue dog over and over again. So, but having some kind of outside guidance can really help prepare you. It's good practice for when you do have a client with something very different. The other way that if you were just looking to challenge yourself, maybe you look out for contests. And I'm not talking about like design contests where somebody wants a logo and they hire 100 people. That stuff's bad. What I mean is, like, look out for science fiction magazine contests or something, and they'll often say this month's theme is dragons, right? And then it's your job to just sit down and draw the coolest dragon you can think of and submit it. That way, there's actually a chance of winning too, which has its own benefits, whether they're monetary or just exposure. But that can help you kind of like generate ideas. Other than that, I just get a lot of ideas from other artists, because I spend a lot of time just looking on Instagram and following people on Facebook and whatnot, and seeing what they're up to, you know. And from there, if it works, I mean, it looks like what they're doing is working, I might try my hand at that. You know, like right now I want to draw some samurais, so that'll probably be my next personal project if I ever have time. Hi Tammy, thanks for coming. Yeah, that jab at Blue Dog was probably totally undeserved, but it seems like a good example where that guy found something that worked, and he had no shame in repeating it. And that's that's kind of an interesting thing about my job as a freelance artist, and anyone who's listening who does the same thing, is that unfortunately when we do something cool that works, we can't repeat, you know, by definition, we can't really repeat it again and again, because you know, a client is not going to like it if they call you and say, hey, I love that logo, can you do one for me? And then you just basically reproduce the same logo with a little bit of a twist. It doesn't work. So constantly you got to reinvent things over and over and over again. So every single day, you know, I'm having to come up with 2 or 3 different designs, but completely new. But of course, I got a lot of stuff that's inspired by previous stuff that I've done, so it's you build up like a visual vocabulary over time. I think it's easier. Hey Robert, how you doing, man? Thanks for joining me. So you're asking, what's your camera and recording setup? Dude, that has become one of the trickiest thing about all this. I actually, in preparation of setting up today's video, I broke 2 things that I used to use to hold the camera. Just bent them right in half and then threw them across the room. It sucks. So you can't see it, but I do have a decent tripod hooked up, and then I have this Logitech HD 1080p webcam that I got on Amazon. I think it was like 40 bucks. It wasn't too expensive, and that's just plugged in to my computer. It's got a really long cord, so you can kind of put it where you want, which is nice. And it seems like the video quality is pretty good. I've seen some people on their channels have like insane video quality, and I don't know if that's necessarily the camera or if it's more about what kind of lighting they have in their studio. I don't know. It's difficult to justify spending a lot of money on this yet, but anyway, I'm looking into it. And then I have a microphone that works most of the time. I'm having a little issue where sometimes in the middle of the stream it sounds like I'm Darth Vader or something, and I gotta unplug the mic. Which that sucks because that mic wasn't cheap either. That was maybe $50, so it's not just some cheapy thing. But I'll be getting a new mic at some point. And other than that, I'm trying today. If anybody follows me on Instagram, I actually have my phone propped up too, and I'm broadcasting live to Instagram as well. Because I figure if I'm going to sit down and do this, I might as well engage with as many people as possible. But setting all that up sometimes takes a lot of time. So each time I do it, though, it gets a little faster. But Robert, if you have any specific questions, you can just message me later, you know, or give me a call. Yeah, so Tammy is asking me a really good question that I think would be worth discussing. She's asking me that sometimes her clients come to her and they basically just want her to copy something. And you're asking me, so how do you know, do I encounter this, and how do you handle this without upsetting the client? So first of all, I just want to say, like, I appreciate that you even are bringing it up, like that you think there's something fishy here, and maybe that shouldn't be happening. Because there's definitely no shortage of artists that don't seem to have a problem with that. I used to get a lot more of that, where people would contact me and they would say, I don't. If you're familiar with an artist named John Lean at T Design, I think is his business. He does really awesome stuff, and I know his prices are pretty high. I mean, not high. I don't mean high like they're unjustified, but they're higher than average for a t-shirt. So what I would get is I would get a ton of people contacting me, and they would just, you know, copy and paste a picture of John's artwork, and they would say, hey, can you do this? Or something like it, you know, and of course those people usually didn't have a lot of money to spend. So most likely what happened is those people first, they didn't contact me first, they contacted John Lean first. And when they saw his price, you know, now they're going to contact somebody else who they think will just be able to copy it. So luckily over time, as my portfolio got better, and I think as I was able to add more bigger clients to my client list, I stopped receiving as many of those, and the reason I believe is that people might realize that maybe I'm not going to be the guy to copy or to sit down and willingly copy something. So if you're getting a lot of those, I would just say keep working, and eventually a lot of those people will just go away, I think. As far as how do you handle it, some clients just really don't get that that's not cool, you know. They might have just found something on Google and they think it's okay to just copy it. So what I would do is, you know, tell them you really like that design, but tell them that, you know, because another artist did this design, we got to make sure that it's inspired by it, but quite different. And then that's where you come in and you say, this is what I love about this design. Here are the things that I think we can change about it to make it even better. And I'm not talking about like you change the guy's, you put a red scarf on him, you know. I'm talking about you got to make it a totally new design, okay? But just try to walk them through identifying what are the things that they liked about that design, so that you can figure out how to sort of add them into your design, but only in like as inspired by. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but But anyway, great question. And yeah, it happens a lot. It happens more than it should. And in fact, I've seen my designs a lot of times. Some bigger companies have used my designs on like design boards where they just go through Google and find a bunch of stuff, and then they will say, hey, we need freelancers to do something like this. And that kind of sucks because they didn't come to me, you know. Anyway, great question. So KT is asking about the teeth lighting. How am I doing that? So basically, I'm going to zoom way in here. There's really only 4 colors going on. There's like this white, this yellow, and then this gray stuff was the base color. This blue is the shadow layer that I drew. So all I'm doing is just creating a lasso, you know, like this, and then quickly changing to a soft brush and painting it with yellow, and that's all I'm doing there. Hey, I want to answer a question from Guy. Have you done any skateboard graphics? I have. I've done, unfortunately, I haven't done anything that's really been printed on a large company's skateboard. So I've done things for like smaller independent skateboard companies, and then I did some of my own personal work recently for a skateboard like art catalog or art book, I guess. I would absolutely love to work with a skateboard company, and I've reached out to a lot of them. Unfortunately, it's an extremely competitive field. So they don't, you know, you think about a skateboard company like say Thrasher, I think is one. They actually don't print that many boards a year, so right away you're going up against a very limited window, limited space, I guess. And then on top of that, most of these places already have a full-time designer because it's just cheaper. You know, if you're going to pay an artist, I don't know, if you're going to pay an artist like $15 to $100 for a skateboard design, you realize that, well, if you're going to have 20 designs in a year, it'd be a lot easier just to hire somebody, probably, and have them on call, and then they can also do all kinds of other stuff as well. So that's normally what happens, and I learned that by listening to Adventures in Design, because they would often have like the full-time graphics people who work at skateboard companies, and you realize real quick that like almost everything in their catalog was designed by one guy. So that can be very tricky to break into. And the other thing was, there were a couple skateboard companies that did contact me, want to work with me, but like I think the fees that they wanted to pay were extremely low. And I'm usually able to kind of like find a way to work with people, but in these cases it was so low it just would never have worked. And that's a bummer too. I keep finding that out, unfortunately, is that a lot of the industries I want to work in, they don't have any money to spend on art. The music industry is a perfect example of that. Oops. Hey, if anybody has an iPad Pro, you probably already know this, but Clip Studio Paint was just released for the iPad Pro. They have a totally independent app for it. I used to have an iPad Pro. I just tried it out for like a couple weeks and then returned it. So I'm kind of kicking myself because maybe that would have been worth a try, but I don't know. So far I hear good things about the app. Hey, Robert, I want to answer your question in just a sec. That's a great question. I'll come back to that. Hey, guy who says you own a skateboard company. Message me, man, or send me an email, because even if it turns out that, you know, maybe you don't have the budget for custom artwork, I've got a ton of artwork that I could, you know, that we could put on a skateboard that's already finished, and it's pretty much ready to go. So maybe we could do that. And Robert, I'm coming to your question. So KT, asking about the shadow layer. Do you decrease the opacity of the paint of the layer to show through? All I did, let me show you my, oh, you know, I already collapsed the shadow layer. But all I did was set it to multiply at 100%, and I just painted with a very, it's probably this color, I'll bet. It's like a very, 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 very almost white, grayish blue, okay? And not, that color is not going to work for every situation, right? It just, you're going to have to play with it. But basically, a little bit of color in it goes a long way, and it needs to be very bright. Because if you don't, if you just use like dark gray, what's going to happen is everything is going to look very dirty. Oh, okay, so Robert is asking me, oh, and I'm coming to you, Robert. So Kevin talking about the new app for Clip Studio Paint. You were thinking about switching, but the subscription model is a pain. Here's two things real quick about the iPad Pro. I made a video. I just got to get around to posting it. I really did not like it, which is really bizarre because so many of my peers love it. I mean, they love it so much that they're ready to ditch Wacom. And I mean, I tried it every day for 2 weeks, you know, and it felt too much like a toy, and it must just be that there's something about the way I draw that just doesn't work for that. Because like I said, there's artists who do incredible things. Will Terry, for example, he's doing entire children's books on the iPad Pro in Procreate, I think, and that's amazing. And I wanted to love it. I gave it a chance because it is so light and portable and fast and everything. But it just felt like I was pushing a plastic nib or a plastic stick on a piece of glass. And I got some kind of screen protector that allowed me to give it a little bit of a pull, a little bit of a texture, but it just didn't work. So I'm going to end up getting the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, which I keep hearing great things about. And I'm excited about it, but it is twice as expensive. You know, the iPad Pro is $1,000 once you add the pencil, and the Mobile Studio Pro is like $1,800. So anyway, Robert, oh, your question's gone, but I think you asked something like where I get clients or what's the process. I've answered this before, but it really is the question, right? And I guess the answer is like kind of an all of the above strategy, because I never know what's going to work. I've put together campaigns before that I thought would attract a lot of new types of people, and then did not even come close, you know. But then other things that I didn't even do on purpose like work really well. So I try to just kind of be everywhere in a little bit. I try to spend a lot of time on social media. I do reach out to businesses that I really want to work with, and that, I mean, you always have to do that, but the problem with that is it's like the success rate of that is very low, because everything has to, you know, the planets have got to align on that. You have to not only be exactly what that client is looking for, but you have to also be in the price range that that client is looking for. And even worse, you've got to, even harder is, you have to be contacting them at the exact moment that they need something, you know, and that's what happens a lot more often than not, is that I'll contact somebody and they'll say, you know, yeah, we like your work, that's great, we'll keep you on our list, you know, we don't have anything right now. So anyway, the reason I said that is, like, definitely you need to reach out to people you really want to work with, but don't depend on it, because that's really more of like trying to, I guess, steer the direction of your company. I don't know. So the other way, people find me through Google a lot, and I think that's just from constantly posting new stuff to my website. And also what's really important that I think a lot of artists forget about is that once you do have clients, especially clients you like, make sure to really follow up with them often. So I have a system where any clients that I like, or clients that I don't like but pay well, I will follow up with them like once or twice a year. And it can just simply be like, I'll just shoot them an email and say, hey, how did that t-shirt turn out, you know, and let me know if there's anything else I can do for you. It doesn't even have to be anything real crazy. And that works. You know, I think I'll probably get 2 or 3 jobs a month just from reaching out in that way, you know. And then that gets easier too as you go along, because obviously the more clients you get, the more repeat business you'll have, and then you can be more selective with new clients. Other than that, I've tried, you know, I'm on portfolio websites. That's a good thing to be on. I've tried like paid advertising. I've tried mailing service programs. I tried that like 2 or 3 years ago. That did not work at all. I lost probably $1,500 out of that. I think that was called agency access. And from talking to other artists, that's a total ripoff. So don't do that. I tried not hire an illustrator. Directory of illustration, where you get your artwork in one of those books. It cost me $1,500 to be in a book the size of a phone book, and I got exactly 0 calls from that. So, needless to say, I didn't do that one again. What else? Oh yeah, that's right. So when I was talking about the app, when I was talking about iPad, I do agree. I think it is unfortunate that Clip Studio Paint went with the subscription model. But not just that, but the price seems really high. Sketchbook Pro, for example, they have a subscription model. They don't force you to use it, but it's sort of like, hey, you know, if you want these extra features, you can sign up, which to me, I think is a much easier sell. But I think they're only at $4 a month. And now I know that sounds kind of probably cheap to say that a program I use every day for my business, I wouldn't want to pay $8 a month for. I guess the problem I have with it is that I have already paid for Clip Studio Paint. Granted, it didn't cost me very much. So now you'd be asking me to kind of pay for it again, but you know, now $90 every year. So I don't know. I think they're going to have trouble with that, to be honest. I think the price is a little too high. But what do I know? In fact, you know, I talk to a lot of artists, and again, the reason that a lot of people are using Clip Studio Paint, and I mean, besides that it's sweet, is because they were turned off by Adobe's subscription model. You know, I hear that so much. And I pay the Adobe subscription model because I use it every day, and this is my business, and it's only $10 a month. To me, that sucks, but it's probably still a good deal, right? But there are a lot of artists out there who are just doing this as a hobby, you know, and they don't want to pay even $10 a month. So to come out and charge that amount right out of the gate, I don't know. We'll see. I'm always rooting for them, of course, but see how that plays out. Alrighty. Hey Randy, what's up? Yeah, say no to DOI. Have you, Randy, have you ever advertised in directory of illustration? I'm curious. Let's see. Sorry, I think I missed a lot of people's questions. If I missed anyone's question, please just write it again, because the feed is kind of hard to keep up with. Hey Robert, right back at you, man. Your artwork is great. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. Alright, anyway, so, okay. As you can see, I jump all over the place. I don't usually jump around this much. I think I draw a lot differently when I'm broadcasting live sometimes, I think, because it's a bit of a blur. I feel like I black out through most of it. Alright, so I'm going to paint these pretty fishy lures. You know, I want to say real quick, one of my favorite things about being a freelancer as opposed to having a full-time job at a place is that you kind of get to become sort of a part-time expert in everything. Like, for example, these fish, right, or just fishing in general. I'm not a fisherman by any means, and but I kind of have to pretend to be for a little bit here. You know, I have to do the research and make sure that things are looking fairly accurate. And every time I do that, you learn a little bit more about something that you wouldn't have been a part of. One example is motorcycles. You know, I don't ride a motorcycle, probably never will. But I've done enough T-shirts and drawn enough motorcycles that I feel like I know a little bit about them. And that's really cool because otherwise, like at my old job, it was just sort of drawing the same things over and over again. And this is kind of neat that even year to year, I don't really know what I'm going to be drawing, what's going to be the new thing. Yeah, so Randy, you said, I think you and I have talked about this before, you also advertised in Directory of Illustration in 2006. So I did it more recently, I guess it would have been 2014 or 2013. And like I said, my results were terrible. I didn't get anything. And here's why I don't think it worked. In retrospect, right, I still have that book on my shelf, and when I look at it, the artwork that the rep helped me pick, they wanted me to go in a more children's book direction, and when I look at that artwork, I just want to vomit. It's so gross. It sucks. It sucks. And I'm not even being modest. It's complete garbage. And especially like stacked up side by side by with the other amazing artwork in that book. So you flip through that book, and there are probably 2,000 pages. I'm not real sure. This is a lot of pages. How many pages is the Bible? It's about that much. And the chances of anybody flipping through that book and then landing on my page and saying, "Oh man, yeah, this shitty children's book artwork. This is the stuff I want." So it never happened. And basically, I think the reason they called me was they needed to fill the book. You know, they didn't have enough artists, or maybe an artist canceled. They did give me a discount. It normally costs like $2,200. So anyway, it is too bad it doesn't work, because I would certainly love something where I could just write a check and all of a sudden have a bunch of new, bigger clients pour in. You know, but that's just not how it worked for me. And to be honest, I've talked to a lot of artists, and it doesn't sound like it works a lot for them either. Tammy was asking me, what texture brush did you use for that chin? You're talking about the skull here. If you're talking about these black dots, when I was inking, I used one of my stippling brushes. If you've already bought my Manga Studio brushes, it would be in volume 2, I think. But talking about the directory of illustration, like, I also received a call from Workbook, which is the competitor of directory of illustration, and it's really the same price. You know, it would set you back $2,000 to be in these books, and the salesperson was really nice, and very complimentary of my work. But when he sent me a workbook in the mail to look through, all of the artwork in there was very like designy, like award-winning illustration kind of stuff. Stuff that is not, for example, a skull in the bottom of a lake. You know what I mean? I would never fit in that book, and I'm sure that salesperson probably knew that. So if anybody listening gets a call from those guys, I would just, tread really carefully. Like, reach out to people, other artists that you know. Maybe even look in the book and find the artwork that looks like similar to yours, and maybe just write that artist a message and say, "Hey, is this working for you?" Of course, he might not want to tell you. I'm not sure if I would, to be honest. Alright, so what do I want to do here? Let's do this hat. Right now I'm just painting with the lasso fill tool, which is awesome. This is something that I wish Photoshop had too. It's just a lasso tool that automatically fills with your foreground color, and that may seem stupid. Like, you may think, well, why not just hit Command backspace to fill? But it just saves, every stroke saves a second, and that So I'll use this sometimes if I want to do some kind of shading or texture that I don't want to look like a brush stroke. I was thinking the other day that I might have to change the time of these live streams because Clip Studio Paint is largely a Japanese program, and those guys are all asleep right now over there. So I don't know if it would be worth trying to find a time that works better for more people. I don't know. Friday works really well for me though, because it's normally, people aren't calling, and usually all the rush projects or whatever are already done, so it works for me. So, hey Robert, I want to ask you about the iPad Pro. So you still are finding you're doing just concepts with it and then doing everything in Adobe Illustrator. That was sort of my gripe with it, I guess, is that I really wanted a device that was 100% a portable studio, right? Like I wanted something where if I had to go, if I was on vacation or if I was in a hotel or something, like I would have everything I need to do some, final work if needed. And I had a problem too with how the iPad works with files, and I noticed that they changed that recently, where now they actually have a file browser. But it just seemed like every application saved your file in a different way, and everything was iCloud based, and I didn't know where things were actually going, and I don't know. It didn't work. Didn't work for me. But like I said, I'm in the minority there. You're another guy who uses it and loves it, so makes me feel like a freak. Hey Matt, sorry I missed these questions here. What's your solution for your keyboard, game, mouse shortcuts when you go to the Wacom Studio Pro? Yeah, so Matt's talking about this thing. This is a Nostromo gamepad, and it's awesome because it programs. You can program a million keyboard shortcuts into it, and then allows you to work really fast and change your tools on the fly really fast. So he's asking if I get a Mobile Studio Pro, well, how the heck am I going to handle that? I used to have the Wacom Companion, the first one, and what I found was since it had a touch screen on it, I actually didn't feel like I needed a Nostromo gamepad as much. especially because most of the work I was actually doing on the mobile or the companion, most of it was prep work, right? So I would do sketches, for example, or final work, something that's already pretty much laid out, and then I'm just inking it. So I would just choose the tasks that I needed to do on it that didn't need a lot of fancy button clicking. I would probably never use Photoshop with it, I don't think, because Photoshop, usually when I open Photoshop, I have a lot more complicated procedures going on. You're working with text and whatnot. So if I'm just on the couch, I don't think I'll end up needing it. But I did see that Wacom sells that little puck for the new big Cintiqs. It looked like you could also buy it for the Mobile Studio Pro and it would work. So I don't know, maybe that's an option. They don't make it cheap, of course. That would add another $70. So I'd have to think about that. But yeah, I'll definitely miss it, but I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker. The other thing is too, like I needed, going back to the iPad Pro, that was another reason I didn't like it, is because I was also looking for something. I don't have a laptop. Like my wife has a MacBook Pro, and those things are pricey, so we're not getting another one if we don't need to. So I was looking for something that I could sit down in front of the TV and answer emails. And the problem with the iPad Pro is that everything is an app. It's not the full Mac. It's not full Windows. So when I was using Gmail, none of my plugins would work. It's just you're just using the Gmail app. You're not using full Gmail. And I use a ton of apps. Like I use Full Contact, which is a great app to organize your contacts. I use Streak CRM, which is like sort of a marketing email thing. I use another thing that it's like Simple Notes for Gmail. It basically allows you to just attach a sticky note to emails. I use that all the time. Anyway, so with the iPad Pro, it basically became like I could only use it for just like very casual emails, and I don't know. That's why I'm excited about the Mobile Studio Pro, is it like that could be my laptop and my travel tablet, if that makes sense, or couch tablet. All right. Okay, sorry about that rant. Yeah, that's right, Randy. So Randy says he hates the Wacom puck thing. I remember you saying that, actually, so I'll probably skip buying that. I remember you saying too, maybe this was somebody else, but you said that with the new 27-inch Cintiq, the touch was terrible. I've heard that from a lot of people, that for some reason the touch feature is so buggy and unpredictable that they turn it off, which sucks because that's an extra $400, I think. But I'm waiting until next year because I think they're going to release like we talked about this before, a bigger one. Bigger's better. Alright, so I want to start painting these ropes. Okay, so looking at this drawing, I think for me the skull is pretty much finished. I need to do the ropes and then add detail to these reels. And then that'll be about it. I don't think I want to add any other colors to the skull. I don't think... Or let me try this, actually. Nope. Hey, got a couple good questions here. I'm sorry, I'm probably not pronouncing your name right, but Zador on Facebook, asking me if I set up work for silk screening and what I do for color separation in Manga Studio. So I get this question all the time, and it's a good question. I will do a little bit of both. So with this design, as I explained at the beginning, this is a full color design that my client is going to separate. He does a really good job at separating things, but I've been trying to kind of stick to a limited color palette so that when he does separate it, it won't be as challenging and it will look pretty much as it looks now. The last design we did, it looked like it turned out just as I had hoped, so that's great. So I would say probably about 30% of the designs I do are full color and I don't have to worry about it. Then another 30% are designs that kind of like this one, I guess, where let me back up. 30% of my designs are totally full color. They're just direct to garment, so nobody has to separate anything, and it's, you know, what you see is what you get, and those are fun. Then the other 30% are situations like this where they are going to be silkscreen, but the client is going to do the separation. And I found that when working with like bigger clients, I was lucky enough to do something for Hulk Hogan recently, and they don't want you to separate colors. They have guys who do it. They just want you to send the artwork, and they will take it from there. And I love those situations too. Then the other 30% is where I do have to design in limited color, and I definitely don't enjoy that as much. And the way I handle it here in Clip Studio Paint is I just keep each color on its own layer. You got to do a lot of planning ahead of time to figure out how many colors you're using and what order they're going to go in and all that junk. But once you do, I just keep I make a layer folder for every color. You can actually set a folder to have a specific color, which is kind of nice because then you just paint in black with everything. And then when I'm done, I will flatten or merge each group so that I've got each color on a different layer. And usually that's enough for a screen printer. Then they use that to make the screens. But sometimes I will need to do, like for smaller shops, I'll need to actually make the screens themselves. That's a pain in the neck. And usually what I do is take it into Photoshop and export it as a, I don't remember the name of the file, but it's kind of like a Photoshop sort of EPS that you can then open in Illustrator, and that works well. So that's what I do. And if things get crazy complicated, I've worked with a color separator before that I would outsource to. He charges like $10 a color or something, and usually that's worth it because if I'm going to try to separate it myself or design it myself to be perfect for separation, that's definitely adding a lot of time anyway. So I actually might save money by hiring someone else, if that makes sense. Sorry, there was another good question. It went away. Hey Isabella, my daughter is watching. I don't think she typed that though. Sorry, I know there was a good question right after Zador, but it disappeared. So if I missed your question, just go ahead and ask again. And actually, I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon. So maybe another 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions before I go, I'd love to help you out. And I really appreciate everybody who's watched today and asked questions. it's really enjoyable. Appreciate it. You typed that. Good job. Yikes. Alright, great. Well, thanks. If there's no more questions, guys, I'm just going to sign off, and I really appreciate it. I'll be back next Friday afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I better plug myself. So, my name is Brian Allen. I'm a freelance artist.
You can
buy my Manga Studio brushes at flylanddesigns.com.
Anybody
other stuff too, like stickers and prints, please subscribe to my YouTube channels. And I'll see you next week. Thank you.